let me thank my colleague. First of all, once you get in elected office, you have to make sure you thank your colleagues, because Maria, the next day you're going to need their vote when you go to Sacramento. So don't, you want to be right or you want to win the vote. And so let me begin by thanking Nuri Martinez, Councilwoman from San Fernando Valley. She's here this afternoon with us. She's here to honor Chole. She has a city resolution, and so I want to thank her for joining us. I also saw earlier, and look, I love all of you. All of you are so important to my life and to my work and to what I do. And none of it would have been accomplished without our personal relationships, without our interpersonal interactions, without the experiences that make us what we are today. All began with Bert Corona. All began for me with an understanding of the rights of immigrants as part of a broader working class struggle. Those began when I was a very young man at UCLA. They were the obvious next step from the Chicano movement, and they were so significant for me and for my life. And so I want to thank all of you. But there's some people who are significant in their own ways, and I want to thank them. I saw Mark Day here, and Mark, he came up from Southern California, an extraordinary leader, a brilliant man in his own right. And Mark, I'm honored and flattered by your presence this evening. There's so much to say about Bert. He deserves the book that they wrote, but it seems that he deserves more than that. So much is written about Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, and they deserve what's been written about them. But it's lacking in literature, in the history of this state and this nation, both in the history of unions and the labor movement, and the history of the civil rights movement, of the Chicano movement. So many movements were part of Bert Corona. He was an intellectual, he was an organizer, he was a giant amongst leaders of the people. And he deserves to have his dozens and dozens of books written about him, the different phases of his life, the decades and decades of his life. I could think of 4 decades with Bert, but that's barely half the story. A young man, an athlete with a scholarship, headed to USC to play basketball, and then becomes an organizer, part student leader, part union leader. What a model and example for those of us who were members of CASA and spent our time reading Antonio Gramsci. He talked about an organic intellectual, and that was Bert Corona. A man of the people would be the popular phrase today, and that's who he was. And I know that I admired him, and I loved him. He was a gentleman, but he was also a very thoughtful man, a universal man, a Renaissance man. And he was the model for at least me in terms of how to conduct yourself, how to comport yourself, how to engage people of power on behalf of other people. Few people in my life had that influence. My father, of course, my constitutional law professor at People's College of Law, Sam Rosenwein, and Bert Corona. He was of that stature, and so it's not to take anything away from others, but clearly the literature is lacking in what the influence was of Bert Corona. I remember once I was working for the United Food and Commercial Workers, and we were going to organize a chain of stores, and we started a campaign to organize because they were Latino workforce, undocumented in many instances, and I said, let's bring Bert to do a training for us. And I was shocked that the organizer said, well, who is he and what has he done? And that is the challenge that confronts us today on his 100th anniversary. Here, this room filled with leaders, everyone in their own right, a militant. As Nativo said, this is like an assembly, a monthly assembly. I remember I walked into the assembly and I wasn't supposed to be there that day. And everyone was like, what are you doing here? But we were there because Bert had taught us that we needed to organize, that we needed to be together. And we needed, at the end of the day, what was most particular about Bert, we needed to be with the people. And that was so significant because that distinguished him from those who had the rhetoric, those who had the great speeches. It was Bert that had the support of thousands and thousands of people. He was an organizer and a leader of leaders. And so we're all here fortunate to be his legacy. And Chole was that part of that as well. Chole was extraordinary. And before all the great women leaders who are here today, and I respect and love you all, but Chole was that model and that example. I want to thank Nativo for suggesting that we pull this together. It's a special time for all of us. Our community has seldom been under attack in the way in which it is today. And we have a long history of being under attack. But to have a presidential candidate start his campaign by specifically naming us as the problem of this nation, and then to proceed through his campaign on a continuum of attacking us and workers and immigrants, and then to move into the first year, the darkest year, it seems, in our experience of a presidency that is amok, in which now a lawyer in New York can throw a tantrum if he hears workers speak Spanish, where in Montaña, two citizens can then be faced with proving the right to live here as American citizens. And in this city, children go to school every day wondering if when they return, their parents will be at home. These are extraordinary times for us, unprecedented. But yet, the good news is that there is a gathering here. Hundreds of us, skilled, experienced, with clarity and understanding, as Bert would say, that an injury to one is an injury to all. We are experienced, we have capacity, and we know that resistance is familiar with our life and our personal struggles. And so I'm more optimistic. There's a comrade. He's going to have to do more reading for that. I'm going to assign you the chapter on millennials. How to turn off the cell phone. We are here at this moment where we are experienced with this clarity of the moment, of history, but also with the conviction of the future, that this is our time, and our time is the future. And so it's for us to continue to organize, to build organization, to build leadership, and to remain firm in our commitment and the values that Bert expressed, that an injury to one is an injury to all. I'm honored that all of you are here. I'm flattered by your attendance. We are acknowledging every member of CASA with a resolution from the city, and I think that's appropriate, and I'm proud to do it, because members of CASA were in many respects the founders of today's dream movement and of the dreamers. As I thought about the poster that all of you will take today, what we should put at the bottom, and we put something that Bert said frequently, that an injury to one is an injury to all. But I also thought that Bert was, if anybody, is the original dreamer, the original person who brought our community together, who thought that there were no borders and that we were one without borders. So I thank all of you for being here. I'm very excited. I'm happy to see you. As Nativo noted, there's a lot of grain taking place here, but at least we have hair. Some of us. Dennis, I love you, brother. You've been very special. And I'm just very happy to see all of you. I'm just really flattered. I appreciate, on a personal note, I'll finish by saying, I know that for the last 20 years that I've been in elected office, that I've shared in your support both personally, those who have come to my campaigns, but those who have just even given a thought to the success of what we're doing. What we've done is extraordinary. It's not normal, but you know what? We are all the legacy of Bert Corona, and so be it. Thank you so much, and God bless everybody.